Hello everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we are going to play with some alcohol inks and create these really beautiful rainbow backgrounds, which are actually really easy to do and lots of fun to make. We're going to start today's project with some Yupo paper. This is Ranger Yupo paper, and this is the heavy stock kind. You want to make sure you get the heavy stock kind because it can handle the heat embossing, which we do later for the sentiment, much better than the thin kind. I also have a really cheap Bristle brush here. This is just about 2 inches wide, but you can use whatever width you like. It just changes the width of your rainbow. I also have a ceramic plate. You could just use a styrofoam plate if you have that, or if you rather. And I have some alcohol. This is isopropyl alcohol. It's at 70%. If you can get 85, that's even better. I'm going to pour out a little bit less than a tablespoon down into my plate, and then I'm going to grab my brush and load it up with some of that alcohol just to kind of dilute the colors and stretch them a little bit more. Here are my alcohol inks I'm going to use. I have 7 colors picked out, and like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of load my brush up with that alcohol. Not very much, but just to kind of get those bristles a little bit wet. I realized I needed a little bit more, so I poured out a little bit more onto the plate, and I will load my brush up a little bit more. This again is just to kind of get those bristles wet and moving without relying on a bunch of your alcohol ink to do that. Now I'm going to grab my colors for my rainbow. I'm starting with my middle color because remember I had 7 colors. My middle color here is my yellow. I'll squeeze a little bit out, and that yellow is actually sunshine yellow. Then I move to my orange, which is sunset orange, then to my red, which is watermelon, and then I'll finish up with a pink or kind of a purple, which is wild plum, and that's going to finish up my right side of my brush. And then I'll move to my greens and blues, first with citrus, then stream, and then last sailboat blue. And that will complete my rainbow. I also wanted to point out that I'm only squeezing like 4 or 5 drops of each color onto the brush. Now to paint, I could go vertically or horizontally with my brush strokes and get a different look. I'm actually going to go diagonally for this panel, and I'll just start at the corner and go all the way across, and you can see it transfers that alcohol ink beautifully on there. What I love about the brush is it really gets this beautiful, super streaky look. Now I love that. I wish I had just stopped right there, but I wanted to blend it out a little bit more. So if you like the blended look more, you can definitely get that just simply by going over where you painted before again, and that just kind of mixes those colors and you get kind of a softer, not so streaky look. So I'm going to hold up to the camera here, and you saw how quick I did that, maybe like 10 strokes at the most, and this was completely done. I'm going to set that aside to dry. Now I'm going to do another one. Now I'm going to do a little different brush stroke, and I'm going to do a zigzag here, and this creates a really cool pattern. But as you can see, my brush is already running out of ink, so I'm going to load it up again, starting with my alcohol. Load my brush up with a little bit of that, and again, that alcohol stretches our alcohol inks. Now I will load the brush with a few drops of each color of my alcohol inks, just like you saw me do in the very beginning. Once I have my brush all loaded, I will try that stroke again. So I'm going to do a little zigzag here, and you can see how forgiving this process is. So even though I did that first stroke, I'm able to go right over it again and intensify the colors and even change my zigzag just a tiny bit. You know, it's a little bit different than what I did before. I'm going to repeat this process, doing this zigzag at a diagonal to complete the whole design. This kind of creates a really cool tie-dye look. And this whole process of alcohol inks and using them this way kind of came about from Jennifer McGuire. She came up with this really brilliant way of creating designs very similar to this one with a protractor, and hers are gorgeous. So if you haven't seen that video, you have to go check it out. I wanted to try it out with a paintbrush and see. I was hoping I'd get a little bit more streaky looks, but it looks basically exactly the same as Jennifer, but still really beautiful backgrounds and so easy to do. So I went ahead and trimmed the panels down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so an A2 panel size, and now I have these 2 dies. These are both from the Outline Love combo set. One is the Outline Love matching die, and one is the Outline Love word die. So I use the Outline Love word die to die cut some white cardstock 3 times. I'm going to layer these die cuts together, but first I'm going to remove the negatives. I'm going to first take out that center circle and just discard that, and then I'm going to remove the interior of the O, the L, the V, and the E and set those aside because I'm going to use those to create part of my sentiment for one of my cards. Now these little tiny little pieces that are left inside, I'm just going to throw those away. I'm not going to bother with those. And now that I've separated all my pieces, I have the love outline here and then the negative pieces that were inside separated. I'm now going to start to adhere them together. So I'm going to start with the outline love here and just add some Tampo Mono multi-liquid adhesive to the top of it, and then grab one of the other outline loves and just stack it on top. And again, this was die cut. This white love, or the white cardstock loves, were die cut with the outline love word die. So after I stacked that one, I'm going to do the little inside part of the O, and then I'll repeat that process till I have all three of these outline loves stacked up, including even the little center for the O. So I'm done with that love. Now I'm going to move on to this one. So as you can see here, I've got all the negative pieces that we die cut, removed from the die cuts earlier, and I'm going to stack two of the negatives together. So I'm going to stack two of the V's, two of the E's, two of the O's, and two of the L's together. Once I've completed that process, I'm going to set them aside, and then I'm going to grab that vellum love that you see up there. That one was cut with the outline love matching die. That matching die cuts out a love that fits the stamped love that's in the outline love stamp set. So I'm going to grab that vellum love and then just adhere my last remaining negative pieces, so the last remaining LOVE that I still have, and just glue it right onto the front of that vellum love. Once I finish that, I'll then turn it over, and then I will adhere the love negatives that I stacked up. So these are the double layer love negatives. What this does is, by adding that little stacked up cardstock behind the vellum, it helps to pop that vellum away from our alcohol ink background, and will just give it a nice little kind of like halo, and you'll just see it a little bit better. Sometimes vellum gets lost when it's right up against your background. So if you give it a little lift with some dimension, it really helps to make it a little bit more opaque. So I'm going to now adhere my alcohol ink backgrounds onto their A2 top folding white card bases. I'm just going to use some more liquid glue here. That's just my favorite way to adhere, but you could definitely use a tape runner if you prefer. Here is the Outline Love stamp set. So I'm going to use this to complete my sentiment. So I've got my Misty here, and I've got my sentiment positioned. I'm put down some anti-static powder, and then I'm going to grab some Versamark ink because we're going to do some heat embossing. So here's our embossing ink. Just going to ink up that sentiment, just stamp it right down onto the card front just like you normally would, and then I'm going to pour on some white embossing powder. And I'll just tap off the excess, and a little bit stuck, so I'm just going to grab my brush here and remove any little tiny bits that stuck. Now I'm going to heat set, and this is the tricky part. So you want to make sure that your heat gun is really hot before you bring it to your Yupo paper or your embossing powder. So I did heat it up off camera, but even though it's really hot, and even though we're using that heavy stock Yupo paper, I'm being super careful and not keeping my heat tool over my Yupo paper very long, just a little bit, just to kind of get it to melt and then pull it away, get it to melt and pull it away. It is very, very easy to get this Yupo paper to warp, so you definitely have to be very careful and take your time, and just be very mindful of not letting your heat tool be on your Yupo paper for very long at all. So I've went ahead and stamped another sentiment on the diagonal striped alcohol ink background, and now I'm just going to adhere our love die cuts, and then we'll finish it up. So the striped one obviously gets the outline one, and then that zigzaggy kind of tie-dye looking one will get the vellum love one. And then again, I'm just using some more Tampo Mono multi-liquid adhesive to stick them down, and now my cards are complete. And I'll hold the cards up to the camera so hopefully you can get a good look at the backgrounds as well as the outline love sentiments. I love this outline love combo. It's just so awesome. It has everything you need to create the sentiments for these cards, and it's just so graphic and bold. I love it, and works really well with some background techniques, and just a fun set to play with. And here is our striped diagonal one. Really love how this one turned out. Love how stripey it is. And if this at all looked intimidating, I really want you to encourage you guys to give it a try because it's super easy, very forgiving, and tons of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you want any more information on the products I used, please check out the links below. And if you like this video, I would so love for you to subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me on Instagram or check out my blog. I'll share those links in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.